Detectives arrested 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee.
Moscow police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger is the man responsible for the murder of 4 University of Idaho students. Records show he's from Pennsylvania. He completed both his undergraduate studies at DeSales University. Bachelor's degree in psychology, according to his commencement video from the school, and his master's degree in criminal justice. He just graduated this past May. This video is from the commencement, showing him accept his diploma. We know he then was a PhD candidate at Washington State University for criminology, where he was also an assistant instructor. WSU confirmed he just completed his first semester earlier this month in that program. A since-deleted post on Reddit shows about 6 months ago, Kohberger was asking for participants in a research project to, quote, understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. Moscow police say his last known address is in Pullman. And new video from WSU's campus shows police investigating the apartment complex where he was living. We spoke with a neighbor of Kohberger who learned of his arrest and connection while he was at work.
I mean, it's just nuts. I was sitting there at work and my boss said they just arrested somebody in the Moscow murders, and I told my wife about it, and she noticed there was a live stream going on right outside of our apartment, and that's how we found out that he lived right here, you know. So I'm just kind of dumbfounded, you know, that this could be going on right here, you know, or like, you know, somebody could be conspiring to do something like that right here.
Kohberger will make another court appearance on Tuesday in Pennsylvania for an extradition hearing.
The arrest went down here in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, some 2,500 miles away from the murder scene in Idaho. The FBI and a police SWAT team raided a home in this private gated community behind me around 3 a.m. Kohberger reportedly had a blank stare as he was arrested and also asked if anyone else had been taken into custody. Now, we're also learning that a white Elantra, like the one police had been searching for, was impounded. Kohberger will remain in custody behind bars here in Pennsylvania until an extradition hearing next Tuesday.
Kohberger is a PhD student in, get this, criminal justice at Washington State University in Pullman, just 8 miles from Moscow, Idaho. That's the same college attended by Jasmine Kernodle, sister of one of the victims. He was researching criminal minds and actually reached out to career criminals in a Reddit post. My name is Bryan, and I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence committing a crime. This study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense. Could the grisly murders be part of his gruesome research?
I spoke with Steve Gonzalez, the father of Kaylee Gonzalez, who said that they don't know who this man is. And the reason that's their first response is because police have maintained all along that this was an isolated and targeted attack, yet they don't know who this guy is. So they are looking to see how he could have possibly been connected to Kaylee, Madison, Zana, even anyone in that house or just the house itself. They also said, though, you know, that they're happy and that they're thankful to hear this news today. And there is a lot of news still to come, as you mentioned, Terry, and the chief alluded to this as well, because once he is extradited to Idaho, which could take some time, in fact, the governor might have to get involved if he doesn't come willingly. So once he's extradited to Idaho and appears in court here to face his charges, it's not until then that affidavit will be unsealed. And once that affidavit is unsealed, we will likely learn a lot more about the particulars of this heinous crime. Right now, authorities still said that they haven't found the murder weapon yet. You remember they said it was this large knife and that each student was stabbed multiple times in their beds, likely asleep at the time of this attack. They are also saying, though, that they have found this white Elantra that they were looking for. And ABC's Aaron Katersky reporting that his sources say they tracked the car to him in Pennsylvania. Important point there, because also the chief didn't say that there had been other arrests, but they did say that they were looking for the occupants of that car because it was there at the time of the murders, and they thought that they could potentially have some information. And so The chief didn't allude to any other arrests being made at this point. Right now, we are honing in on Bryan Kohberger. And for people that are watching that may not understand the layout of this area, he was a graduate student at Washington State University in Pullman. And Terry, that is less than 10 miles away from Moscow, and his apartment right now is surrounded in crime scene tape and being searched.
Shocking event for this community. It remains a shocking event given how far away we are from Idaho here in the Poconos Mountains in Monroe County in northeast Pennsylvania. It was just up that road behind me. That's a private gated community, so we can't actually go in without the permission of the property management team here. But it was up that road that a team consisting of members of the FBI, Pennsylvania and Idaho State Police, as well as Moscow, Idaho local police, all of those departments represented in the team that went in and made the arrest, that executed the arrest warrant, finding Bryan Kohberger at his parents' home, actually just up that road behind me there. It was in the early morning hours that they executed that search warrant, bringing him to the Monroe County Correctional Facility. That is where he remains at this point, awaiting, we're awaiting news about what he will choose to do with these extradition proceedings.
They are going to need to build a profile of this suspect. They are going to want to paint a picture as to who he is, what his interests are, any pre-indicators that he may have given to other people of his propensity to commit a crime like this. They will look into what he has studied, his academic records, his work history, all of his friends. It will be a fairly extensive investigation to know everything they can about this suspect in this case. I would tend to think he's going to be extradited. He might fight it. It might drag it out, for a little bit of time. And his lawyer may very well give him that type of advice. But if they've got a strong enough case to have gotten to this point, and it is now public, I would believe they've got more than enough to extradite him to make him face those charges. It's just a matter of time of when.
The FBI brought in a team of analysts to look at CCTV, I suspect even private home video. They spent a lot of time. So there is a potential that they tracked that Elantra obviously near the crime scene. But then as it moved around, you remember there's a really blurry shot of it by a gas station. But did it head towards Pullman, Idaho? And do they have pictures of that vehicle like going across the state line in or near the residence where he lives, which sounds like it's about, according to Kana, maybe 10 miles away or so. So it is those types of pieces of information in these really difficult cases that will take you to a defendant. And my guess is that was a big piece of figuring out that he may well be the guy who committed these crimes. Typically in a case like this, I'd have to know more. The focus is really going to be in Idaho. They've got him charged with first-degree murder. I don't know if Idaho has the death penalty. I think you'd have to charge him with capital murder for that. We'll have to see. It may not fit the parameters of that. But the point being, the FBI, the Idaho State Police, and the Moscow, Idaho Police will all sort of funnel their intelligence to that local prosecutor that talked to us a few minutes ago, and he will then ultimately put the case together that will end in a plea, or obviously it will go to trial. Well, yes, but like Kana mentioned earlier, we'll have to look at this probable cause affidavit because it's got to be more than just bare bones. It could be just bare bones, but my guess is it'll give more detail to basically show that they can put him at the crime scene, maybe back to his apartment in the state of Washington, and then ultimately, obviously, traveling back home to northeastern Pennsylvania. It's the little pieces potentially in between of what did this suspect say to fellow graduate students, other folks, prior to and after this murder, and who really knows him. Granted, he's working on, it sounds like, a graduate or PhD degree in criminology or criminal justice. And, how does that play into maybe why he committed this crime? Well, we'll really have to see. But there is a lot of pieces, but my guess is that sounds like they've got a reasonably solid case even at this point.
We know that leadership at the department, and undoubtedly the lead detectives, have had a lot of contact with the families, have shared information with the families, have told them everything that they could tell them. And in the process of doing that, you can't help but to form a relationship and to form somewhat of a bond. And, sometimes those things can be contentious. Sometimes there can be tension. But most of the time, there's a relationship that's formed that will last forever. And it sounds like in this case, that family is appreciative of their efforts and what the department did for them.
Lightning fast for a homicide, quadruple homicide investigation of this complexity. I mean, a lot of people on the internet were chiding the police for moving slow. They didn't move slow. This was an amazingly fast investigation, and they got their man, as I kind of thought they would. And I think that, my reading is that they've been tracking him for a couple of days. Probably likely trying to get a DNA sample, like we saw in the Golden State Killer case where they followed D'Angelo around for a few days to try to get some item that he touched or he drank from his trash or from something else, and match the DNA profile that they had, when they did that extensive crime scene in that house. That took time to get all those blood samples separated and then develop a DNA profile. And now that I think they have it, because part of this is a DNA genetic match to some of the material in the house. So now if you have him in that house, you have his DNA in or around the victims. I think, they've got their man.
Are still looking for all pieces of evidence, but we are still looking for the weapon. And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
Well, first, I think the Elantra was key. And you kind of got that feeling when they were really saying people in this car has vital information. They really wanted this car. It wasn't just a couple of different vehicles. It was one very specific vehicle. They saw it on video. There weren't many other cars in the area moving around that night. So I think they really, really knew that that was a crucial piece. And I think they probably have the Elantra. He probably drove it back to Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, I think that long drive from Idaho to Pennsylvania, he had ample opportunity to ditch that murder weapon, which is probably a large knife, in any number of places. And that's thousands of miles of roadway. There's probably lots of bodies of water. I ran the FBI dive team for a number of years. A lot of people like to ditch things over bridges in water. It could be anywhere, unless he gives them some kind of indication of where he deposited that murder weapon, or unless he made a really amateur mistake in putting it somewhere where they'll find it. It's going to be difficult, but that's not crucial. I don't think they need particularly the murder weapon in this case to get a conviction.
Well, this is all going to be part of a huge, big psychological puzzle for this guy. I know when I was investigating homicide that we would do a psychological profile or a psychological autopsy on the person that was our suspect. And this is all going to be part of a huge puzzle for this character. I think it's interesting that he's got this background in criminal justice, so forth and so on. So you wonder if maybe the answers will come out is that a lot of this was just a progression of events, that he wanted to see if he could get away with a crime like this. And he became fascinated with the workings and the mechanics of this type of an event. It's kind of a strange, and looking at the guy's picture, looking into his eyes, I mean, I've looked into the eyes of evil before, and I've got to say that just the picture appears to me that he's kind of above it all at this point. He's not remorseful in any way. He's a little bit arrogant, as a matter of fact, and he's kind of waiting to see that now, okay, the story is out. Let's see what these police officers do. And to what Bobby was talking about, they're doing the due diligence. They're executing search warrants at his apartment in Pullman, and I'm assuming they're going to execute a search warrant at the parents' house in Pennsylvania on the vehicle itself, and they'll be executing search warrants on the cell phone if they got one. I agree with Bobby. I don't know that it's important necessarily in the string of evidence to get the murder weapon. It would be nice icing on the cake, but he may be one of these guys that he may have kept it as a trophy. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
It's a pending case now in court, and I in my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all of the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're right that they want to tell us what they've had because they've worked really hard in this case and they've done a really great job. And they've been nothing but, chided on the internet by amateur sleuths who think they can do it better and the police are making all these mistakes, which is ridiculous. And so I think they want to come out and show the fruits of their labors, their very, very intense labors over the past 6 weeks. And I think that, and they'll have every right to be lauded and applauded for the work that they've done, because like I said, this is a lightning fast investigation in a quadruple homicide with a very complex crime scene. So I think they want to say it. They want it to come out. But as the prosecutor said, everybody's got to hold the reins. We will not get every answer when that affidavit is unsealed. It's a very minimal document. They just put enough in there to meet the probable cause threshold. So I think that there'll be still more questions, but that'll come out in the pretrial hearings and ultimately at the trial if he does go to trial.
Well, Bobby is correct. That's all an affidavit is. It's probable cause. Now, sometimes the case itself will determine the amount of probable cause, but the prosecution is not going to divulge all of their evidence in a probable cause affidavit. They're going to be keeping that back, and they just want enough in there to do that. Now, there may be a little bit more in this affidavit than normal because of the circumstances, but for them to hold back whatever they're holding back, of course they want to tell us. However, look, the whole point now is that we have a successful prosecution, and the death penalty is on the table in this case. These prosecutors are not going to do anything that's going to compromise the ultimate outcome of this, successful outcome of this prosecution.